Yes, people, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a very special bespoke video. You guys know, right, that if there's things that we don't know about or things that we're trying to talk about, what always happens here at United View? We say talk to the experts. Whether it's Bloomberg with the financial situation with the takeover, or whether it's ex-pros to try and get a look in from them, whether it's fans from other clubs to truly find out about players we want to get, and in this case, injuries, right? We're going to be breaking down the injuries that we've gone through, some of the ones that we have now, and I thought, who could we get in? Who could we get into UVHQ who is, one, qualified to talk about this, and two, that we actually know and can get here? And it came to me. Dr. Andre. Dr. Andre joins us.
Yes.
From Oxford Natural.
Yeah.
We've been doing, for those of you that have been watching, which you should have been, on our Optimum journey, KG, myself, and I know Robbie's been doing his as well.
Yeah.
Really, really good results. We've been looking good, feeling great. And we had this idea that actually Dr. Andre is so much more than just, you know, the guy that helped us on our health challenge. You've actually got experience as a Premier League doctor.
That's right, yeah, this is back late 1990s, going through 2011. I started with the Everton Academy and first team, and it was a fantastic 12 years, fascinating medicine like I'd never come across before. And it's the whirlwind, the circus of the Premiership as it was then, as it is now. And you feel like after 10 years I'd seen everything and it was time to do the next thing. But, you know, my first day on the job, there's a really experienced physio he says, medicine, injuries, there's not much changed since the time of the Greeks.
Oh, wow.
And in many ways, that's true. The fundamentals of injury, how it happens, how it heals, the first few weeks, you know, there's not a lot we can do. And then there's obviously advancements into surgery and rehab, of course, but so much of it hasn't changed for thousands of years. And there are fundamentals there that we can talk about that can be helpful to understanding players' injuries now, injuries that you may have at home, and hopefully it'll be useful.
Well, this is exactly what we want to do because, Dr. I don't know if you've been keeping up with Man United, right? We are coming off the back of our worst ever injury spell. Like last season was a joke. Injury ravage, every player. Some long-term with serious injuries, some always getting recurring niggles. There was always someone injured, and right now we've still got some serious ones. So for you guys, what I will say, we're going to be talking about Lenny Yoro. I want to get into what's happening with a foot injury. You know, he's broken some bones in his foot, which leads into Lisandro Martinez. Luke Shaw, persistently injured all the time. Mason Mount, since he's come to Manchester United, had loads of niggles, a lot of long-term injuries. Who else? Malacia with his knee. So a lot to get into. But just really quickly before I start, you know, throwing some questions your way and you can enlighten us, just give us a little bit of a insight with just some of the players and some of the people you've come across, because there's an interesting story about Mikel Arteta. Yeah. I know Wayne Rooney, you said you had an academy. Just to give the viewers a little bit of an insight.
Well, one reason I started the job was if I can just see one great player from beginning to end, that would be a gift. So I was lucky enough to see Wayne Rooney when he was age 14 plus. I remember being in the room with David Moyes and Wayne when after the first game or second game he played, he said, look, Wayne, you're going to come straight into the first team. We'll bypass the academy. Just the three of us. I thought, am I actually hearing this here? You know,
was you like, what, he's too young? This 14-year-old's going to be in the...
He could have gone 2 years before. You know, it was... I'm not a football aficionado, but I understand movement. And when you just see somebody move that way, because all players look great to me, because I'm not a footballer, they all look amazing. And you just see this movement, this thought, this speed. It just stands out. If I can see it, well, everyone can see it. I have been called to do a medical. They said, you know, don't tell anybody. It's top secret. Go down now. We need you in the next hour. So I drove like a loon. I thought, who is this person? Opened the door. It's Gaza. Okay.
Wow, you've done Gaza's medical.
And I was thinking, how do you do Gaza's medical? Like, where do you start? I did it, and he was a beautiful man. We took all the details, and I said to the club, I said, well, you know, what do you want to know? And they said, it's a free transfer. What's his life expectancy? Is it more than a year? I said, well, yeah, we're okay.
Is that, what? What's his life expectancy? Imagine that. Oh my days, that would be nuts.
Tongue in cheek, but it was. So yeah, and Yeah, I mean, lots of beautiful players. And Mikel, I did Mikel's signing medical. All that we came from a Spanish team. It was unusual then to get Spanish players. It was quite a novel.
Was it Sociedad, was it?
Yeah, it was. That's right. Yeah, and he's he was clearly a fit guy.
Yeah.
We were taking him, whatever. He was bright, intelligent, savvy. English was good, and if I turned him down, he might not be here. I'm just saying, the
Dr.
power.
Andre had a hand in bringing Mikel Arteta to this country, and it's your fault now why Arsenal's so good. You should have rejected him.
Sorry.
Then he would have had a rubbish career. Then no one would think he was a good. Anyway.
But that's what I think. Back to the room.
Yeah.
The fitness room. Then injured players looking around. Who's in today? You may have Wayne with a niggle, Gaza on one side, Mikel, Lee Carsley. I mean, these people in the room, and you never think years ahead.
Yeah.
That the importance of these guys.
Yeah.
So there we go. So
that's the backstories. That's what I'm saying. So
Dr.
Andre, we haven't just tried to just have a little gimmick. He's not just dressed up in these clothes to pretend he's a doctor. This is like legit. Yeah. He's been there, done it, worn a t-shirt. Right. Let's get into this. I mean, there's so many places I can start. I want to start with recurring injuries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start with like Luke Shaw. He's had a really, really tough time. A lot of United fans have been, like almost like finished with him, saying like it's time to leave because you're always injured.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in that camp too. I just think that we need a reliable left back. But obviously from the medical, that's from the football fan side. From the medical side, he's had a lot of hamstrings, a lot of muscular stuff. He did have a bad leg break, I think 2015. In your experience, when players keep breaking down with multiple injuries, different types, whether it's muscular or impact, I know it's going to sound so random or open, but as a bystander who don't know, why does this keep happening to him?
Yeah, I mean, there are certain points in players' history whereby it can be that the wear and tear aspect can't be protected by the muscles being clever. And so when something wears over time, because it's a gradual process, your muscles can adapt and adapt and adapt, and you don't know you have such an issue. Have worn knees, arthritis, you wouldn't know. They're on the x-ray, but you wouldn't know because the muscles are protecting, the secondary guarding of the joints. But then when a few injuries come in and those muscles that are doing all the protection get knocked out, they can't quite regain their nerve muscle intelligence to protect the worn area. And then you're in a difficult situation whereby you can't quite the bit that's injured was actually fundamental to other joints behaving themselves. And then it gets quite complex because then one affects the other. So if the muscle strength is affected by the injury, but that was keeping the knee in place because the knee's worn, then suddenly you can't get the connection back again. And then you put more duress than on other parts of your body, and then that gets exposed too. So it's unlikely that it's mishandling of him. It could just well be that he's just got a series of things, and there's some fundamental protector of him that was working well that's now been injured, and then he can't get that back again.
Is that just is it sometimes just down to your genetics, or like you're just unlucky? Like some people are, like in football, with the term injury prone. You've seen players down here always injured, and some players. Bruno Fernandes, the captain, only missed his first game through injury, I think, last year in his whole career, pretty much.
Yeah.
How do you get that chalk and cheese? Is it sometimes just down to your genetics and your composite then?
Yeah, I mean, very much. I think, genetics, how the joint is truly under the microscope, because joints work by being cleverly designed architecturally to glide and float and be smooth. And if you have a little knobble or irregularity, then over time that's going to catch up with you. But if you just designed with the most congruent knee imaginable, where one blends with the other like a hand in glove, then that will work so much longer than ones which aren't quite that way or not balanced that way.
And you can't choose that. That's like, it's just how you're born. It's how your joints are.
Yeah,
it's how your
that's
ligaments
right.
are.
Yeah. I remember doing a signing medical, and they sound very complicated sometimes, signing medicals. And they are often scans and things left, right and centre. But sometimes we do the most simple test with somebody when we want to sign them is just get them kneel on the couch, okay? So on their knees, okay? And then lean back as far as they could, okay? That way, okay? And literally it could save you thousands on scans.
Really?
Because it would show up every error from the ankle to the knee to the hip to the back to the shoulders. I remember failing a player, an international player, got me in huge amounts of trouble just on that test, because he just couldn't do it.
Why is that getting you in trouble? Because they want him signed?
It was just that the agent went ballistic.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because when you fail a player, imagine...
it's over, the move's off.
I mean, this is the thing about football medicine, is the stakes are incredibly high.
Yeah.
Whenever something goes wrong, somebody has to be to blame, because the pressure is so much. And sometimes it's out of your hands. As you say, it's just down to genetics at some point, and you can't always undo that, even with the clever things you have at your fingertips.
It's so funny you say about blame, right? Yeah. Because I'll give you a little insight, because I know you might not follow Manchester United week in, week out, but you've got this fantastic insight. What we're saying as fans, or what a lot of topics of conversation are, is something's wrong in the medical department.
Oh yeah.
And there's been huge changes in the medical department as well. The load management of the players, is the coach putting too much strain on them? There has been some reports in the media that, with Lenny Yoro example, is a young centre-back we bought from France. He's come in and they've done a scan, seen that there is an issue with his foot, or an issue, I think maybe with his knee. They saw an issue, but they've persisted with him. And then when we was at open training in the summer in the States, we saw him and he missed out a session. So we thought, that's interesting. He probably won't play against Arsenal in the game. He did. Then he goes down with this foot injury now and he's out for 3 months. So a lot of the scrutiny is mismanaged. They knew he had an injury. What's going on? Luke Shaw last year, he played one game, I think it was against Luton. Came off against Aston Villa at like half time. Then he played against Luton, then had to get taken off. I think it was that way around. Then we didn't see him again for ages. Again, we're like, who's given the go ahead? We had a left back that we sent away who was cover. And then Eric Ten Hag infamously in a press conference said, well, I was told that I would have 2 fit left backs and now I have none. So we let one go. So there's always been like the blame. And Luke Shaw came out himself and said, basically, it's a bit of everyone, the medical department, the coaches, and me. Like he sort of said. So what I want to ask you is, where does that blame, can managers be putting too much on players? Can medical departments just be getting it wrong? And can the player be pushing themselves too much, too hard, in almost like a not wanting to take advice on and maybe hiding some pain or hiding discomfort?
Yeah. Yes, and yes. Okay. It is very, very complex. Obviously, when a player's injured, the first thing the manager wants to know is, when is he back? And even you can be carrying them off on the stretcher, and they say, how long is he out for?
That's all they care about.
And you go, well, give us a minute, just to look at it. So obviously there are factors, there are patient factors, which in this case is the player. There are team needs. There are medical rules, and sometimes in sports medicine it gets very fuzzy, because the pressure is so much, and the blame game is such that you don't be the one left holding the baby in terms of it was your fault. So, I mean, medical departments never want to hurt people. They always want to do good and do the right thing. Sometimes things work, sometimes things don't work. Can you train too much? I said that little chat before. We've had people train players too hard sometimes, and therefore they're still recovering from the training session by the time the game comes around. I did not know the specifics of the club in that sense, but nobody is perfect, and players themselves can be very complicated. They can be desperate to play, hide their symptoms because they just want to play, or they can overlay their symptoms and make them sound worse than they are because they don't like the game, the way it's going, and don't want to have the spotlight on them. So it's a real swirl of complicated human nature and politics and medicine combined. So but the medical department comes under huge scrutiny, and whenever it goes wrong and a player isn't back when you said he was going to be back, he's back in 6 weeks and he isn't, then the pressure comes. And then the pressure's on you, well, we said 6 weeks, it hasn't healed, we've done everything right, but he's not coming back in 6 weeks, we must be doing something wrong. But nature's just not always like that. There are healing times which are averages, but we're different. Some people heal quicker, some are older, some are younger, some have got infections, some don't eat right, some have poor diets. I mean, there's a lot of individual factors which can affect your healing. But you can certainly copy it as the medical department. I'll give you a good example. Okay, I had a lovely French player, had a long-term history with hamstring, and came to me and said, "Doctor, inject me with this. No one will inject me. Use this." Okay, and I looked at it, and it was water. Okay, it basically said
inject him with water.
It said it was something, but
Right.
it said there's so little in this product of this thing. It cannot be said to have anything of that thing in it. Okay. So it was one of these sort of homeopathic things, whereby water has memory, and if you shake it up and dilute it, it'll remember what you put in. It was one of those, it was this sort of homeopathic idea. Right. I thought, well, I don't mind injecting you with this because it's water, you know. So I didn't say that. I went, okay, we'll give it a go. But I thought it was safe. I injected him, and he was better. Okay, played the game, scored a goal, says to everyone, Dr. Andre is a genius. Okay. 2 weeks later, it's sore again. Okay, he says, do it again. I was like, okay, we'll inject it again. I inject it. The next day, it's more painful. He misses 4 weeks. He says, Dr. Andre is an idiot.
Oh my God.
And all I was doing was injecting water on both occasions, but the complexity of everything was you had to repair your relation with the team to say, no, that was just how it
because
went.
you want them to all believe in you. Like if one player is going around saying, I'll tell you what, mate, don't go and see him. I want to talk about some of our longer absentees. So I know maybe you might not be synonymous with the players, but we've got a guy, young player, Terrell Malacia. He's had a torrid time with his knee. Really, really torrid time with his knee. A couple of operations in now because he's come back from the first op. Setback wasn't right, had to have it done again. Setbacks after setbacks, and he's only just apparently getting on the grass individual training now, and then to go with the team. And like I said earlier on, Lenny Yoro, youngster, he's only 18 as well, has a foot injury, and last season we had Lisandro Martinez, who I think is about 25, 26, mid-20s anyway. He fractured his foot in the game just on the turf. Again, out for the rest of the remainder of last season. And then, season before that. And then he came back quite early last season. We were like, oh, he looks a bit off. Then he goes down again with injury. And then he has to go off and have another op to fix it because they said it wasn't quite right. So in terms of when you break bones, how complex is it with these types of foot injuries where it's very meticulous in the metatarsals and you're trying to work out what's going on and you get these setbacks?
Yeah, I mean, they can be more complicated than you think. Let's take a commonly fractured bone like the fifth metatarsal. That's the one on the outside of your foot, from your little toe down to your ankle. Common injury, remember Rooney having one of those?
I was going to say Rooney, yeah.
And because of the bone's nature, parts of the bone don't get a very good blood supply. And if you break the bone, you think it's just one fracture. If you break it through that zone where the blood supply is weak, then there's the potential that it can never quite heal properly.
Right.
And then you're left with the dilemma is, do you let it heal naturally, which is always what you want, but there's a chance then of re-injury. But you get the player back, okay, like you said you would, okay. Or do you say, well, you know what, this could well break again. He needs an op to bring him back properly.
So in the op, sorry, just quickly, what do they do? What are they actually? What's the physical? What are they doing? So I know it's easy saying, well, his bone's broken, mate, just going to fix it. But what actually happens? Yeah.
So generally, once you enter the realms of operations, you're normally using some sort of metallic structure, a wire or a pin or a screw
to reset that.
And the question is, well, okay, a screw. So if it's broken and the middle bit's broken and it will never come together and knit, because you know the blood supply is poor, then, okay, you've got to put something through there to connect the two ends together. Pin, screw, whatever. Simple, okay, put in a screw. Okay, but what length? How long? You know, is it a short one or a long one? And there's a whole argument about which one's better. And then sometimes is the screw too big, but then it makes the bone break down either side. So that's just one fracture. How many varieties of ways that can go well and go wrong. Then you talk about metatarsal fracture or Liz Frank, which is a very, very complex injury where there are tiny ligaments between the little bones in the foot, and you break one through there, rupture the bone, and it's too mobile. And again, so what do? Do you rest it, let it set, let nature do its course? Sounds like the best option, and they'll get back on the pitch quicker. Or do you think, no, it's unstable, we'll operate because that is the best long term, but once you start putting foreign things in, you always open yourself up to more complications because that's not the way nature designed it. And then you're relying on the bone allowing to take the metal implant and local infection. So it becomes more complicated. So, and then the poor surgeon who's done the operation, then he's the one to blame because he did the operation. So the pressure's on them then if they don't get back in time.
It really is like a big roulette, really, is of like how players take to it. And actually, when I'm thinking back to the Martinez, because there were so many different ones, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, you guys will remember, I'm pretty sure he did his foot against Sevilla, then he was out for ages, then he came back at the beginning of the season, then it wasn't quite right, went off, had another op on that foot, then he came back, and then what happened was, he was really unlucky. He went in for a tackle on a player, against West Ham I think it was, and the player landed on his leg, then he done his knee.
Yeah.
So that was, he's injury prone, well hang on a minute, that was just a freak accident now that happened to his knee.
Yeah.
But what that was going to lead me into is when you suffer a big injury like a foot injury or have to have an op for something, how does it affect, like you're saying, other major parts of your body? Like say you did your foot, so you've not been training for ages, you've had to be in rest. Is your hamstring now more susceptible to picking up something? Is your knee or your ankle now? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, yes. The second you've changed, the nature's starting point, then there all subtle things can happen, and injure your toe, and before you know, you got a headache because one joint affects the other. I mean, without getting too extreme, but yes, you need to be very careful that you haven't let other parts of your body wither and waste. And that's where the main issue, and people will find this with their own injuries at home, is there's the healing where things knit, there's the strengthening where you get strength back, but there is the what's called proprioception. This is the clever balance of nerve and muscle, this very close relation that does all the clever stuff, all the micro movements to keep it safe, and that's the hardest thing to get back. And often what you find with your own injury is you injure, you heal, you start doing things, and then you collapse again. And that's because you have not done that part of the healing. Yeah. It seemed okay because I could move it. Yeah, that happens all the time. But you haven't got the intrinsic nerve muscle connection, that learning has not returned. And that's where often, that's what gets missing normally with recovery. It's like, oh, he's injured, but now he can run around, he can kick a ball, it's good to play. But has he got that proprioception, has that knowledge in the joint been regained to put it with all the stresses, strains, traumas that come along? And as you say, if you enter a game injured in one area, then you're always compensating with some other part of your body and other additional duress, and therefore more risk on those areas. And when is somebody fit to play? I mean, seriously, that could be a 10-hour podcast. When are you actually fit?
Yeah.
When I think you're fit, when you think you're fit, when the team thinks you're fit.
And do you know what? I really want to talk about this bit, because the return dates of our players, as fans, of course, we're like, 6 weeks, for God's sake. Lenny Yoro's like 3 months. He's not expected back to, I think, maybe late October, November, and he did it in July when we was out in tour. Yeah. So it's a long time. Same thing happened with young Kobbie Mainoo last year as well. Got injured in pre-season, didn't come back till I think the October. Lengthy, and these are the more younger players, 18 and I think they're 18 and 18 actually, both at one time. That bit there, how do you nail down? Okay, and talk us through maybe some of the check boxes versus when you go, right, it's with the gods now. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? What has to happen before they go out there, and then what needs to happen after that?
Yeah, I mean, the initial stage is, and it's true for every injury you have. Anybody at home gets an injury, there's a certain mantra you should follow for every injury, which is, first, you regain full movement. So the joint moves fully, okay? Then you regain full strength, so you can do what it did before in terms of pushing and pulling or whatever. And then you must regain full function, which in a footballer would mean being able to train as before without a problem, okay? Right. That is true recovery at that point in time. The problem is that a simple factor like pain, so okay, I've done it, I train, but it's still hurting.
What's the reaction after you've done that? Yeah.
So is it hurting because it's just sore, there's new nerve endings, put up with this? Is it sore because it's too much? And that is always very difficult because a player can have full movement, full strength, full function, thank you, tick, 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 but it hurts. It's like, okay, we don't know why. Is it good? Is it bad? Can we play through that? Is that just part of the healing process? Tricky, tricky. And the player breaks down, it was painful, why did he play? You said he was. So, but certainly if a player hasn't got the full range yet, and you're trying to push the strength and the function, it always goes wrong. And if you have your own injury and you haven't got the full range back and try and play on a Sunday, that's your recurring issue. You have not obeyed the movement, strength, function pathway. Hence, you keep getting hurt. So someone like Luke Shaw, they would not let him on the field without being able to do the training session.
Right.
But something clearly keeps catching him out, and it may just be that his time is up in that sense.
Because I know it's difficult. Listen, you're going to be in the doctors' union. That's your union. So I understand. I'm not basically trying to get you to say the Man United medical team are a disgrace, and of course, without getting in there and seeing what's going on, that would be unfair for me to ask you to have that, make that sort of judgment. But just as fans, it's just like we just fit. There's clearly a disconnect. Why are our players basically getting injured so much more? And last year was an anomaly. Like it was all around the Premier League, to be fair, and that's when you're sort of getting into the amount of games these players are playing, the different competitions, the distances. Absolutely, because it was across the board. But Manchester United specifically was just, and I'm not gonna lie, it reeked of like, can I say negligent? It reeked of mismanagement. Of some players, it felt, and some was obviously just unlucky.
I mean, we certainly make mistakes. Okay, like any other part of the team, the players make mistakes. So do management, so do medical teams, often with the best will in mind. But there's no doubt that things can get missed, things can get pushed too far. People can sometimes say they can do things when they can't, or they have knowledge where they don't really have true knowledge, but they don't want to come across as being ignorant. And there are differences of opinion in a medical team, and that can be an issue sometimes too.
Yeah, do you ever think something completely different to another doctor saying, I'm telling you now, if you send him out there and you're going, no, he's passed the test, he's all right.
I mean, going from a medical ward round GP practice into the effing and jeffing that goes on in the football world, I was shocked when I first went into it.
I bet you was.
About someone looking me in the eye and saying, you effing know nothing, and I thought, gosh, you've got to fight your corner here. And there's only so much power in the medical department. And therefore, there's always a subtle battle going on as to who actually runs it. Is it doctor run? Is it physio run? Is it sports science run? And that can be a political battle too.
Wow.
And you do find sometimes that people come in with their new ideas, and in a year they've gone because all the players are mashed to pieces. And so yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're the team with the most injuries, you have to, as the medical department, take some responsibility for it.
Absolutely.
Because let's face it, if it's a league, you'd be relegated, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So you would look hard at yourself in that sense.
And that's what's happened at United. I think they've done a review. They've changed a lot of doctors. They've changed a lot of what's going on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but I do sympathise, because it is, you can look like an idiot, even though you've done everything wrong. You can still look like a twit, because nature goes against you.
The last thing I wanted to ask you before we wrap up is the player side. Players, how important is it for players to understand their bodies, or how important is it for them to actually not have that much input at all, because you're not a medical professional, but at the same time, when it's your own body, just like even down the GP, you can feel, say people know their body best.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about how technical some of these injuries are, and the science behind them, and the stakes, and the pressures that's on them to get back, and obviously these are top athletes, so they just want to play.
Yeah.
Can you tell when a player's lying in terms of like, he's saying he's ready, that's a bit of hopium that he's or can you tell when, they're also trying to not get back quick? Could be a bad run of games, teams doing rubbish, manager might get sacked. I'll tell you what, I'm not having that.
That's the most interesting part of the job. It's the most difficult. I remember one of my first days, I walked in, and it was a player was ill, coughing a cold, and they said, check him out. And I said, he seems not too bad. They said, well, can you travel with the team? I said, yeah, he can travel. He goes, there's no way he's going to be happy. He hates playing in London. He doesn't like the travel. I thought I'd walk into football, everyone was the most committed, top professional,
some
imaginable.
Players don't get on planes,
and I thought, okay, this is more complicated than I thought in terms of people. They're just like another bunch of workers, like any workers anywhere.
That's right, might not want to go to work for a bit.
There is, the variation is there. So some players know themselves intrinsically, are highly into the sports science of it. Some have not the faintest idea and will just do whatever you say. And there's a blend of people in the middle. And the more committed a player is to understanding his personal injuries, the better. Can we decide when someone is waiting too long? We can only go by experience. What we know is the normal. and when they start to behave in a way which seems to be counter to that, then it does arise suspicion. And there's no doubt when the team is doing badly, there are way more people injured suddenly.
Really?
With the issue with like sportsman's hernias, and there were a plethora of those. Every time the team was on the dip, groin pain came out. Can't play, groin pain. Okay.
Are you hearing this,
you
guys?
go for the op. They're out for 3 months, and by then things have settled down,
Mate,
and they come back as the hero.
I'm not trying to just like be horrible to certain people, but like there were some people saying like there's a guy called Anthony Martial, right? He was just, mate, his body just started breaking out. I felt really bad like for him because his body started breaking out, and then it was like he ain't trying to get back and fight again. And you know what? You know what he's saying, actually? Because the season went from bad to worst to catastrophic to our worst ever. Yeah. We finished 8th with a minus goal difference. Man United, imagine that, right? Yeah. So even if you don't watch football all the time anymore, you think, oh, yeah, that's bad, right? Yeah. And you know what? Maybe it could have been a little bit of that. Like players going, I'll tell you what, mate. 10, I'll probably get sacked. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? And I don't like to question people's professionalism. I think that's, you know, unless you know, but I'm just, by listening to what you're saying, it's interesting. It's just basically a little bit of everything. Yeah. Mismanagement, players going, I don't really fancy it. The load or the intensity of training, like literally, it's all these things. The last thing actually is, what about outside doctors or so Casemiro, I think there was a story saying that basically before one of the international breaks, for one of the big games, he ruled himself out. He said, I can feel my hamstring, or I can feel whatever it is. Yeah. And they looked at him, and apparently he was past fit to play. Well, the scan says X, Y, Z. And he goes, I'm not listening to you. I'm going to my doctor in Barcelona. And then basically they said, yeah, like you shouldn't have played on that. X, Y, Z, you need to be out for a little bit. Yeah. And the international break did him well. How do you deal with that internally? Because obviously you're the club doctor. You feel like you want to be in control of that. Is it like a kick in the teeth when they're like, well, I don't trust you, I'm going to someone else? Yeah, it creates huge conflict. And in some ways, players really, they should be able to do what they want. No more than if this place had a doctor, they could tell you what to do. You'd say, well, I'm my own person. Yeah, I'm going to go. I don't belong to the club. I'm not a possession of the club. I'm employed by them. But so it's like a grey area where there's an agreement that we'll all do the thing under the medical auspice of the medical doctor. But there's no law that says that has to be the case. The hardest one I ever had was dealing with a witch doctor. Okay, now that was difficult. Okay, so a doctor is one thing, but being asked to talk to someone's witch doctor over the phone and listening to sort of bones being thrown and that sort of thing. When you say witch doctor, what do you mean by that? As in like they're a witch because they're horrible? Or you mean like... No, I mean you don't know the term witch doctor? No, what's that mean? It's sort of in African tribes. Like voodoo and like, like spells and just like... Yeah, shaking bones. Yeah, shaking bones. See that there? Oh, see the future. Because we believe in that. So it was like, I said, look, this operation is needed. It's the best thing for you. Okay, won't do it unless it's confirmed as being appropriate by the witch doctor. So I ring him up and I say, this is what we're doing. And there's a pause, there's a rattle and a, and he goes, bones say it's okay. And I say, it's okay. He goes, it's okay. So I'm telling you, this is years ago. Wow. And, I reckon that still happens now. I mean, everything is possible in terms of belief systems and things. Yeah, of course. So, yes, on that note, very difficult when they start going elsewhere. That's right. Yeah. And the more, just too many cooks. Yeah. In that sense. Yeah. Listen, Dr. Andre, it's good fun. Thank you so much for coming by. I know every so often you're gonna drop by UVHQ. Trust me. Well, actually, I want to say I hope I don't see you again to ask you about injuries because that means Man United won't have any. But I sense. I'm not sure. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? So, but no, we really appreciate you coming in to give us that insight and that look. Yeah. Away from that, guys, like we've been saying, we are fully optimized. We've been to Dr. Andre's clinic. You guys have seen the videos. We've got the summary of that coming up about how everything's gone on our Optimum journeys. I mean, you can see with KG, it's been brilliant. I've been on my fitness journey as well. So has Robbie. It's been really, really good. So we've got the ending coming up to that. So we'll be up at Dr. Andre's clinic very, very soon. Let us know if you enjoyed this type of content as well, guys. It's something different. Again, speaking to the professionals who actually know. We just get angry as fans. Let's be honest. I'm not going to say we're idiots, but we just get annoyed. We just want the players out there and we get frustrated. We have no idea what actually happens from a professional standpoint from the people who know about these things. So where we can here on United View, we always like to try and bring you guys that insight. So Dr. Andre, thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
See you soon.
Yeah, see you
and
soon.
guys, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. We're out of it.